Howard Hughes screening parties. If some Hollywood parties were wild and others were glamorous, Howard Hughes's gatherings were something else entirely. Strange, obsessive, and unforgettable in their own way. Hughes was already known as a billionaire, playboy, and aviation pioneer when he turned his attention to film in the 1930s. His productions, from Hell's Angels to The Outlaw, were ambitious, costly, and often controversial. But it was the way he worked that made his private parties legendary. Guests would be invited to his home or a private theater under the promise of cocktails and conversation. Instead, they found themselves seated before a projector while Hughes screened rough cuts of his films. He would watch silently from the back, scribbling notes, sometimes replaying the same reel over and over until dawn. Friends and actors were expected to stay, no matter how long it lasted. Leaving early was unthinkable. One actor who attended recalled the strangeness of it, hours passing in silence as Hughes muttered to himself about camera angles or costume details. It wasn't a party, he later joked, it was a test of endurance. And yet, these screenings told the truth about Hughes, a man of brilliance, obsession, and isolation. While Sinatra's parties roared with laughter and Flynn's echoed with music, Hughes's evenings were quiet, intense, and suffocating. They weren't about joy, they were about control. The MGM studio lot bashes. In the 1930s, there was one studio that proudly declared it had more stars than there are in heaven. That studio was MGM, and its parties were as grand as the films it produced. When Louis B. Mayer, the studio's iron-fisted mogul, decided to celebrate, he didn't settle for cocktails in a drawing room. He turned the studio lot itself into a stage. MGM's galas were legendary. To outshine rival studios, Mayer commissioned themed extravaganzas that seemed pulled from the pages of fantasy. There was the famous Circus Gala, where elephants lumbered across the pavement, acrobats tumbled in the rafters, and the studio's contract players paraded in sequined costumes. It was a night where Hollywood's finest dined on caviar while clowns and lions performed only a few feet away. Reporters who slipped through described the parties as surreal, half carnival and half coronation. Even the animals seemed under contract, one columnist quipped. Mayer's obsession with control extended even to the festivities. Every star was expected to attend, smile for the cameras, and play their role in Hollywood's carefully constructed fantasy. Attendance wasn't a choice. It was part of the job. And yet, beneath the glitter, there was a sense of strain. For many actors, these parties weren't indulgences, but obligations, a chance to maintain favor with the studio that owned their future. While guests marveled at elephants wandering through sound stages or dancers twirling under enormous spotlights, some performers quietly admitted the evenings felt more like performances than celebrations. Tallulah Bankhead's soirées. She swept into a room like a storm, magnetic, unpredictable, and unforgettable. Tallulah Bankhead was one of Hollywood's great originals, a stage-trained actress whose wit was as sharp as her screen presence. And when Tallulah threw a party, no one ever knew what to expect. By the 1930s, Bankhead had already carved out a reputation as a bold and unapologetic performer. She was quick with a quip, famous for her gravelly voice and for living exactly as she pleased. Her gatherings became a reflection of her personality, playful, mischievous, and just a little outrageous. Guests might arrive at her home to find poker tables set up in every corner, drinks flowing long after midnight, and Tallulah herself presiding like a queen who delighted in breaking every rule of polite society. One night, she reportedly hosted a pajama-only party, insisting that every guest arrive dressed for bed, no matter their status or stardom. Laughter filled the night as Hollywood's most glamorous names sat cross-legged in silk sleepwear, sipping cocktails and trading jokes as though they were schoolchildren at a slumber party. For Tallulah, that was the joy, stripping away pretense and forcing everyone to embrace the absurd. Her sharp tongue became legend. When asked about her wild ways, she laughed and declared, If I had to live my life again, I'd make all the same mistakes, only sooner. That irreverence made her beloved by friends and feared by the cautious Hollywood establishment. Errol Flynn's Mulholland House gatherings. He was the swashbuckling hero of the silver screen, the man who leapt from ships, drew his sword, and charmed audiences with a smile. But off-screen, Errol Flynn's legend grew just as large, and nowhere more so than in his notorious Mulholland Drive home. Flynn rose to fame in the 1930s with Captain Blood and cemented his place in Hollywood history with The Adventures of Robin Hood. Yet, as much as audiences adored his daring performances, Hollywood insiders whispered just as much about the parties he hosted in his hillside mansion. Built in the 1930s, the house overlooked Los Angeles like a fortress, and inside, Flynn entertained with a kind of reckless abandon that defined his reputation. Guests remembered wild-themed nights, masks, costumes, and rooms filled with laughter until dawn. Stories circulated of secret passages and even hidden peepholes in the walls, details that blurred the line between fact and legend, but were repeated so often they became part of Hollywood folklore. Flynn himself seemed to enjoy fanning the flames, once quipping, "I like my whiskey old and my women young," a line that newspapers never forgot. These gatherings weren't just parties, they were spectacles. Musicians played until sunrise, the bar never closed, and guests from every corner of Hollywood, actors, musicians, socialites, drifted in and out like players on a stage. For some, the nights felt exhilarating, a release from the rigid studio system. Frank Sinatra's Rat Pack parties in Palm Springs. In the desert heat of Palm Springs, under skies full of stars, Frank Sinatra built a retreat that became the unofficial headquarters of the Rat Pack. If Hollywood was the stage, Palm Springs was the playground, and when Sinatra threw a party, it was an event everyone remembered. By the 1950s, Sinatra had reinvented himself from crooner to Academy Award-winning actor and the undisputed leader of the Rat Pack. Alongside Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop, he embodied cool sophistication mixed with unrestrained mischief. His Palm Springs estate, complete with a piano-shaped swimming pool, became the backdrop for countless nights of music, camaraderie, and chaos. Guests recalled tuxedo-clad men launching water balloon fights in the desert air, only to end the night huddled around a piano while Sinatra or Martin crooned standards until sunrise. Politicians mingled with actors, mobsters brushed shoulders with starlets, and the air buzzed with a sense that history was happening in real time. Sinatra, ever the host, insisted no one leave hungry, thirsty, or unentertained. Dean Martin once remarked, "It was never work with Frank. It was family." That feeling was what made the gatherings legendary. The men teased each other like brothers, turned practical jokes into high art, and created an atmosphere where laughter never stopped. But the parties also carried weight. Behind the humor and hijinks, Sinatra's gatherings symbolized influence. Deals were struck, alliances forged, and friendships tested. A casual conversation at his Palm Springs home could ripple out into Hollywood and even Washington. Elizabeth Taylor's Diamond Jubilee. She was Hollywood royalty, violet-eyed, magnetic, and larger than life. When Elizabeth Taylor celebrated, it wasn't just a party. It was a spectacle, and one birthday in the late 1960s became the stuff of legend. By then, Taylor had grown from child star to two-time Academy Award winner, and her life was as closely watched as any movie she ever made. At the heart of her story was her tempestuous romance with actor Richard Burton. Their love affair burned bright, fueled by passion, arguments, reconciliations, and a shared taste for extravagance. When Burton set out to honor her birthday in 1969, he chose the only gift he felt worthy of her, a diamond so massive it stopped the world. At her party, amid laughter, champagne, and the hum of Hollywood's elite, Burton presented Elizabeth with a jewel that became instantly famous, the 69-carat Taylor Burton diamond. It glittered under the lights like a star of its own, and in that moment, it seemed to capture everything about her, dazzling, rare, and impossible to ignore. Elizabeth herself embraced the drama of it all. She once declared with a smile, "Big girls need big diamonds." It was a line that would follow her forever, as much a symbol of her wit as her appetite for life's grandest gestures. The evening wasn't just about a stone. It was about the theater of love, about a couple whose passion played out in public for all to see. Guests recalled an atmosphere of awe, a sense that they were witnessing not just a birthday, but a coronation of Hollywood's true queen. Yet even in the glow of diamonds, there was always a shadow. Truman Capote's black and white ball. They called it the party of the century, a night so extravagant, so carefully staged, that more than half a century later, it remains the benchmark for high society glamour. On November the 28th, 1966, author Truman Capote gathered 500 of the most powerful people in the world beneath the chandeliers of New York's Plaza Hotel. And Hollywood came along for the ride. Capote had just published In Cold Blood, and with his literary fame at its peak, he decided to cement his place as not just a writer, but a society figure. His guest list was as carefully edited as any manuscript. From Frank Sinatra and Mia Farrow to Hollywood's grande dames and Washington power brokers, each invitation was a golden ticket to immortality. To make the night more striking, Capote demanded that every guest wear only black and white tuxedos, gowns, and, of course, masks. The effect was breathtaking. The plaza's ballroom became a sea of monochrome elegance, with chandeliers reflecting off satin and silk. Reporters outside scrambled to document who was arriving, while those left off the list seethed with envy. Gossip columnists whispered that the night blurred the lines between film, politics, and literature, uniting worlds that rarely collided so perfectly. Capote, basking in the attention, moved among his guests like a conductor, ensuring every moment struck the right note. A reporter from the New York Times declared simply, "It was the party of the century." And yet, even in its triumph, the ball hinted at Capote's own contradictions. Elizabeth Taylor, already beauty and violet eyes, met Richard Burton, the Welsh stage actor, during the filming of Cleopatra in 1961. Their chemistry was immediate and soon turned into one of Hollywood's most infamous affairs. Both were married. Taylor was wed to singer Eddie Fisher and Burton to actress Sybil Williams. Their relationship, conducted openly during production in Rome, was impossible to hide. Photographers captured their embraces, and gossip columns reported every detail. The scandal grew international. The Vatican condemned them as erotic vagrants, and U.S. male politicians criticized their behavior as immoral. Studios feared boycotts, but audiences remained fascinated. In 1964, after divorcing their spouses, Taylor and Burton married in Montreal. The press dubbed them Liz and Dick, chronicling their extravagant lifestyle. Burton lavished Taylor with gifts, including the 33-carat Krupp diamond, fueling endless headlines. Their love was passionate but volatile. Jealousy, alcohol, and constant attention strained their marriage. In 1974, they divorced, only to remarry the next year. That reunion also ended in divorce, though their bond endured privately. Burton